Diary of Wimpy Kid 2022 is a soulless, lifeless version of the original book and movie. The plot is based off the book with a few tweaks. The movie starts with Greg and Rodrick's parents leaving for an anniversary, and they decide to leave Greg and Rodrick at home alone. Rodrick tricks Greg and Riley into helping him set up for a party. Then he locks them in the basement. Greg takes photos, which he will use to blackmail Rodrick later. After nearly getting caught by their parents, Rodrick gets blackmailed into teaching Greg his rules. His Rodrick Rules. Get it? They set the title of the movie in the movie. This movie, that's about the best joke that this movie has in the entire runtime. Greg learns the guitar and starts to get close to Rodrick and build a bond with him, which was done somewhat well. Then the parents decide to try and go on their anniversary again because the first time it got interrupted by Manny getting sick. This time they go to their granddad's house. Greg gets milked on his pants, gets trapped in the woman's bathroom because the plot needs a conflict. Then after a long chase scene that was used to drag the movie out, Greg has a heart-to-heart with his granddad about how his son doesn't get along and how he wants Greg and Rodrick to be different. Later, Greg blackmails Rodrick again for a school project, and it turns out the project that Rodrick sold him is a bad project. Shocker. Greg blackmails Rodrick again for his money back. Afterwards, he ends up bumping into his mom and drops all the incriminating photos that he took. Remember those that he took at the beginning of the movie? Which causes Rodrick to not be able to play at the school talent show. Yes, there is a talent show that they barely mention throughout the entire runtime of the movie. Okay, Rodrick takes Greg's diary and tells his friends about how Greg went into the women's bathroom. It backfires and Greg becomes the most popular person at school. Greg goes to the talent show where him and Rodrick have another heart-to-heart moment where they become friends again, and Rodrick gets to perform at the talent show. So now that you have a basic idea of the plot, let's talk about all the areas that this movie completely fails in.
Exploded diaper all over the place. Exploded diaper in your face.
Most of the characters in this movie feel like cardboard cutouts of their book counterparts, and it's a very drastic shift. Manny is basically non-existent. Greg's parents are just there to cause conflict. Riley is there, but isn't nearly as impactful or well written as he was in the book or live action movie. The only characters that I feel like they had any time invested into them were Greg and Rodrick, mostly because we spend the most time with them because they are our protagonists. But they aren't really as fleshed out as they were in the book or live action movie. It felt like they were close to making them good characters. They were so close, but the writing and development of the characters was just off, and it was really bad. The pacing of this movie is a joke. I understand that the movie has a short runtime of an hour and 10 minutes, but it somehow felt like at some points it was dragging on for too long, and at some points it felt like they were going too fast. They didn't give the characters that much time to develop, which is a contributing factor for this movie being so boring. It's hard to feel anything for these characters when we don't have a lot of time to see them on screen become actual characters, and just feel like plot devices that are used by the writers to move the plot around. A prime example of this is Greg and Rodrick's parents. They barely have any sort of personality traits outside of wanting to get them to spend time together to get that plot point pushed, or wanting to catch them for the party to get that conflict started. Outside of that, they're not really characters. They're the most two-dimensional characters in the entire movie. The animation isn't that bad, and I feel like some people that are talking about the movie are really over-exaggerating it. I mean, some scenes look horrible, I'll admit, but I don't think it's a contributing factor in the movie being bad, because in some moments, the movie looked pretty solid. If it stayed more consistent and didn't flip-flop between bad and good, it would be pretty great for the most part. But if you're going out of your way to look for the animation errors, that's not really a way that you're going to really notice that the animation is kind of lackluster. But if you're just watching the movie simply to watch the movie, you'll barely notice that the animation looks kind of weird. I still don't like the new character designs, how they look like 3D versions of their, counterparts in the books. And I feel like they could have done something completely different with the whole, art style. But they did it in the first movie, and it does look like an improvement from the original movie. So in this case, I would say that it's gotten better. It's not as great as you would want it to be for a Diary of Wimpy Kid movie, but it does look way better than it did in the first movie. So that's a solid improvement. I really enjoyed the dynamic between Rodrick and Greg a lot, but like I said before, if it had more time to naturally develop across a longer period of time, it would have been perfect. Greg and Riley had a dynamic that I guess started in the first movie, and I think it was pretty solid. Greg and Riley acted like real friends, and you could see the clear power dynamic between Greg and Riley. How Greg treated Riley felt natural and realistic, but when compared to the book and the live action movie, it's not really even comparable. I personally really enjoyed the character dynamic in this movie, and they didn't really feel that forced in my opinion. So people are trying to say that Rodrick and Greg's friendship was forced. I feel like it kind of had to be because of the timing. There wasn't that much time in the movie, but I felt for what it was. If you really look at it from the time aspect of there's not a lot of time for us to do as much, so you got to really push the plot faster a little bit, which is kind of a problem with pacing. It's pretty solid. The dynamics are pretty solid and do what they're there to do. The writing in this movie is easily the worst part of the entire movie. The writing brings this movie down by so much. The lack of personality that characters outside of Rodrick and Greg receive is just terrible. They all feel like cardboard cutouts of their book counterparts in almost every aspect. The writing of the plot is bad from the beginning. The party happens nearly halfway through the book and live action movie, but in this movie we are thrust into this plot point immediately without any actual world building. They expect you to go into this movie with prior knowledge of the books and these characters and want you to put certain parts of the dynamics together by yourself, which is extremely lazy and goes to show that there was no thought or effort put to this franchise or to the people that they were selling this movie to. Rodrick Rules 2022 isn't as good as we would want it to be, and it's a shame that this movie is so mediocre. I want to see this movie series succeed because I really want kids of this generation to enjoy A Wimpy Kid as much as I did when I was younger. And I want this generation to just be able to enjoy the books and the stories that were created in a different format than they're used to. And it just sucks to see what Disney is trying to sell people. So I've got to give this movie a 5 out of 10. It's not nearly the worst thing that I will review on my channel, but it certainly isn't a masterpiece either. And I really am truly sad to say that. Jeff Kinney, I'm sad that your work is being tarnished like this, man. It really just sucks to see that Disney is just completely ruining and botching this amazing book series and ruining these characters.